I've arrived out here a little bit late this morning and I've missed that early morning topwater bite. There's still some shadows around and it's not going to change my attitude. I'm going to go as hard as I can to get some numbers in the boat, but I'm going to take you through not just one lure review. I'm going to show you what I'm trying to change up and what decisions I make on the water. So I'm going to keep the camera rolling this morning and show you what it's all about. I'm going to work backwards. I'm going to start with this OSP high pitcher spinnerbait. It's 3/8 ounce with tandem willow bladed silver blades, and I'm choosing that because the water's a little bit discoloured. We've had a load of rain and so it's a little bit dirty, and I think maybe a bigger profile to what I'd usually go for in these little natural creeks. Little beetle spins and stuff are great when it's clear, but I think with this dirty water it's going to be a little bit better to throw something bigger with more of a presence. So come with me now. I'll go through about 4 or 5 lure changes I think and try and get back to a topwater bite, but we'll just wait and see. So I've got plastics in, I've got little divers and a couple of different tricky lures. Hopefully we can get some numbers on the board and maybe get something on the surface. Let's do it. Yes! Oh, right off the end of that log. And that didn't take too long. Oh, just had to find the right little bit of structure. Nice bass. He's about, he's mid-30s. Good little fish for him here. You can see I'm right on one of the best structures. I was just starting to think about changing because I've fished for about 10 minutes, I suppose. And I hadn't even had a hit, so take a look at this little fella. Oh, he's a bit smaller than that. He'd be about 300, I reckon. He's just smashed that little OSP high pitcher, which is a good start. But aren't they just gorgeous? Push him back in there. Off you go, mate. So I was just starting to slow roll this. Initially you might have seen I was sort of retrieving it a bit quicker, looking for a reaction bite. I decided to slow it down and just find some better cover. So first cast into that log, right on the end of the log. I just got it right to the end, bang, he hit it. So I'll keep persisting and make a decision in another 5 minutes, see how we go. This is the OSP high pitcher. It's a 3/8 ounce lure, and with these conditions, with the intermittent light just coming through the trees now, I just love that for a spinnerbait. So sort of thinking that it might have been a little bit big after I wasn't really getting much interest. So I've slowed my retrieve down, got a hit, which is good. I'm still not convinced this is the lure for the session. Don't want to let a good lure get in the road of a great session, so I'm still just going to keep working things out as I go. It's not as dirty as I'm heading upstream. It's not as dirty up here, so initially I thought a bigger profile spinnerbait would be better. Because of the dirty water, but I think maybe I could downgrade it to something a little bit more subtle. With my cast, you can see I'm very, very subtle with the way that it's landing. I'm not smacking it in there because it's such a quiet area. When the wind gets up, and I'm fishing windier areas, I'm less conscious of making too much noise. But in this sort of stuff, I'm thumbing my spool to slow the lure's entry down onto the surface of the water, just so it's not spooking any fish that are in there. This is such a quiet little system most of the time that I think fishing a bigger profile lure, you've just got to be careful not to be doing too much, because you're going to miss fish. So you can see I've slowed it right down now, because the first sort of 5 or 6 minutes I was fishing a lot quicker and fishing good country with nothing. Still trying to get as tight as I can into the bank, even though it's only about a foot deep in there. The shadows change the game for me, so I'm not that fussed about trying to drop it down too deep as I come out. I'm looking for numbers, so I know there's going to be some fish still in against those banks, hiding in the shadows that are still feeding. Just got to get the lure and the retrieve right. I went with a spinnerbait because you can see the cover here. There's a lot of cover, and I wanted something that was still fairly weedless, but a big enough profile to maybe pull some fish in this floodwater. So starting to think maybe with my casting dialed in now, I'll be able to change and go to something a little bit smaller, less intrusive. Funny because when you fish those logs where you're almost certain there's a bass there, it's not necessarily a really good gauge that you've got the right lure on. You kind of get the feeling like anything dragged past that log, just the nature of a bass is that he's going to hit it regardless. So I want to be fishing with a lure that's turning the fish on and getting him to bite, not just a fish that's super territorial about his spot. Yes! Oh, I dropped it. That was a good fish. That was a better fish right underneath that tree there. He didn't move one bit. I just saw him shaking his head on it. This high pitch is working quite well now. It's all changing really. If I get another couple of hits like that, I'm going to persist with it. He grabbed it like the moment it hit the water, so that's sort of telling me that my approach when I'm dropping this thing in there is pretty good. I'm not spooking fish. Yes! Oh, it's a good fish too, right off the corner. Bit of a surprise really, because I've been fishing the shadowed side the whole time. Oh, he's a beauty. And I just thought maybe go over because of this weed. There's a weed edge along here. I'm not sure if you can see that. There's a weed edge that comes out about 1.5 meters, and I thought, well, often these spinnerbaits are pure just to run along the sides of these weedy runs. I was a little bit impatient. I was just sort of thinking, well, just hit the pressure point, so the front of the weed where it juts out, or a little pocket. He's a beautiful fish taking on this high pitcher. Throw my finger in his mouth. I don't like to lip grip bass, as they're really soft in the mouth, and it's better to support them like that, not just hang them from their jaw. If they're smaller, it's less of a problem, but this one's up over that 400. You really need to support their belly so you don't start wrecking their soft tissue and their cartilage, their jaw structure and their back. What a beautiful fish. This high pitch is starting to work, so I'm going to keep running with it. It's got a little bit of damage there, a bit of scarring. It's caught on that back trailer there too. Off you go, mate. So the little trailer that I've run on the back of this spinnerbait's just picked that one up, which is good because I lost the last one. It's starting to work. Might keep fishing these weed edges and see how I get on. Constantly just evaluating what to do and making decisions on how I can get some catch rates going, because when you come out a little bit later in the morning, it's easy just to start to think, oh, I've missed a bite, or I should go home, that sort of thing. But this garfish following that in. It's so much more fun to just test yourself, throw these lures around, change it up, try different things, and try and get more out of the session as much as you can. This is, you know, that was a good fish. I think, and just dropped a good one. Obviously, having the electric motor means that I can cover a load more ground and fish faster if I want to be fishing faster, so I'm only hitting really the key points along these sunny sides. A really effective way of fishing this weed is, if you're in a kayak, just to side up to it and cast as you move down along it. Often the bass are just going to be sitting right on the edge there of the weed or the grass. And a weedless lure like a spinnerbait that can just get down that foot or so. Usually enough to pull them out, shoot out. It's a really natural feeding state for them to be looking out from the weed and to just shoot out, grab it and take it back in. Good way of covering ground in between the really heavy structure too. And like this, where it just changes, the cover changes, it's a really good spot. Yep. Oh, another good fish. And I wasn't completely satisfied, that's why I was sort of hanging back. I wasn't satisfied that I'd cast that cover properly. He's a beauty, and I've just dropped him. Mid-40s. Great big mouth on him, just opened up and I could see my lure. I was probably trying to get him in a bit quick. Oh, again, just in that intermittent light, this OSP high pitch up. Deadly. You see where I got it there now. I was right in there. I couldn't quite get a cast in there prior to that because of just the cover of the tree that had come right out. So I thought, well, just hang around, don't move on. A little bit of patience just to make sure you properly hit the spot. He's a beast. Really slowed my retrieve down from where I first started with this spinnerbait. Just that's making a load of difference. I've just got the blade spinning now. At the start I was definitely working it too fast. Oh, beautiful, just on the drop. Oh, again. It's middle of the day, and I made the decision to come down to a spot where I knew there was overhanging trees, so I've still had some shadows to fish. There's only a smaller fish from what I've been getting, but it doesn't really matter because I'm having loads of fun. And I feel like the pattern's starting to work. It just goes to show you. Look at that beautiful fish. Look at that. Just goes to show you how important that action is to dial it in and to get it right for the session. Now, I fished this a couple of weeks ago with a much quicker retrieve. It was earlier morning, a lot dirtier, so I was throwing out more vibe, and that's not working. This little OSP high pitcher, it's a 3/8 of an ounce. You can see those blades there. I'm not sure if you can pick up in the light, but they're coloured through the centre with a little bit of purple, and they're silver willow blades. But a slower retrieve and a little stalls is just enough for them to get time to make their decision. And these wild bass, God, they go well. Alright, well, you might be able to see the shadows are just starting to recede a lot more now, so I'm not getting the time in the shadow line in behind it with this high pitcher anymore. So I'm thinking what I'm going to do is go to a little weedless lure that I can skip in there and try and get what's left of the shadows. I still think there's feeding bass up in there ready to go, but I just can't quite get there with this spinnerbait. So it's 11:30 now, and I've probably got 5 or 6 of these bass, but I'm going to do a change up and hopefully be able to keep the bite going and the numbers coming. I didn't get a shot of it, but that little prawn that I just spotted was getting chased out off the bank, so I'm going to throw on one of these little wriggler prawns by Squidgies and skip it in against the bank. They're only really light, so I'm going to go with a super light. I've got a little Katana Estuary Spin Series here, and it's just a little Sienna 1000. I'm going to go with that, and it's a really whippy rod, but I'm going to be able to skip these little prawns in there, hopefully tease a bass out. So these will get right up into the strike zone and hopefully get onto something. Yes, I'm in. I'm on. Deep in there. Oh God. It was barely even in the water. We've jumped over two logs. I've got this gorgeous little bass. I was so slow to set the hooks, it was already hooked himself, this little fella. Yeah, look. Little fella, there you go. On one of these little squidgy wrigglers. Oh, they're just deadly, these little ones. You've just got to be so careful. You can barely get your fingers in their mouth to get a good hold on them. So they're... Oh. More difficult to handle than the big ones. No, I'll give it another couple of minutes. Fairly convinced that it wasn't doing the job, and look at the country that I'm fishing. I should be getting smashed. It's the middle of the day, but there's still a couple of shadows that I can find. This thing should be getting belted. I'm getting right in deep into cover with this thing. Going to be the end of that. I've been persisting with this little wriggler prawn by Squidgies for about 20 minutes, and only for one little bass that was taken in really good cover. I've been fishing good water, but just nothing for it. So I think maybe it's just a little too much of a subtle presentation. I'm going to go to something a little bit bigger and try and turn them on that way. So I'll put this away, and kind of regretting a little bit going away from the high picture, but those shadows were going and it wasn't really starting to look good for it, so I'll try something else. Once the bite slowed a little bit with my spinnerbait, I decided to try a couple of different things. I could see shrimp that were skipping along the surface, really small ones, so I thought I'd downgrade my profile a little bit, and I went to a little wriggler prawn from Squidgy. I only got one bass for a fair bit of effort, so I thought I'd upsize and try and improve the profile of what I was using, and I went with this Chatter Alive by Imigatsu. It's a 70mm, like a little craw pattern, but it's got a great vibing action and really high vibe. It just, as you bring it through, it just goes nuts. So thought I'd use that, but the sink rate on this is a little bit slow for my patience at the moment. So what I'm going to do, I'm just going to throw this spinnerbait back on. I've got about 10 minutes left, and see if I can just get back onto another bass before I get back to the ramp. So sometimes the change up works, and logically I sort of thought it'd be the right thing to do, but I'm finding it a little bit difficult with the amount of cover in there to get this thing out without the weed on it and that sort of thing. So I'll just quickly change back, and we'll go back to fishing what's been doing the damage at the start of the session. Hopefully I can sort of entice another bite before the end of it. Yes! Oh, there it is. That's the bite that I wanted. It's only a small one, but I'd gone away from this lure for about half an hour, and then decided before the session was out to change back, and the sun had just been clouded. It had just been clouded over for like 10 minutes, and I was like, okay, here we go. Here's our chance. And sure enough, he came and grabbed it. Gorgeous little fella. About 5 minutes to fish. I'm going to keep going. Confidence just went through the roof, just come into this little section here. The big tree hanging over, great big tree. Had to be some bass sitting underneath it. One of the only pockets with a little bit of shadow left on it. Back at the ramp now, so that's going to be the end of the session, but that's my plan, to do a couple more sort of videos where I've got a little bit more information in there on how I fish it, and a little bit of the decision making that happens during a session for me with my lure changes. So this morning I missed the early bite, so I decided to go bigger. It ended up being bigger and slower was the way to go. When I was first fishing, I was fishing a little bit too quick with my spinnerbait, and as soon as I slowed it down and I was focusing on those just sort of undercut banks and a really slow retrieve tight to cover, that's when I started to get that bite. So slowed down a little bit now. It's just after midday, it's about 1 o'clock. Hopefully some of this sort of stuff helps you with making better decisions when you're on the water. That's the idea behind it, so that if you can just sort of see what works for me, maybe you can replicate some of the same stuff. But the thing that worked today was this OSP spinnerbait. It's a high pitcher 3/8 of an ounce spinnerbait, and I think it was the dirty water that made me go a little bit bigger. It's just post flood in here, so I thought maybe a bigger presence would work with a subtle entry when it hits the surface, because the fish are right in against the cover. I didn't want to be spooking them with loud splashes. I'll get a couple more of these up in the next few weeks, so if you like this, can you just put a comment in below and tell me what your thoughts are, or if you didn't like it, just so I know what's going on and what you like. And yeah, I'll keep making videos and reviews. See you next time. Yes! Oh, right off the end of that log. Oh, aren't they just gorgeous? Yes! Oh, I dropped it. That was a good fish. What a beautiful fish. Yes! Oh, it's a good fish too. right off the corner. Off you go, mate.